Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Died and Got Reborn as Dragon Faunu in RWBY, with Past Memories movie. Before we start, please go support Draconarius23 for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made, there will be some mistaken character's gender, but of course Issei is a male. After his death after using that technique that gave him great power. Issei would be reborn in another world as a being known as a faun, but not just any faun, rather a unique faun of his kind, a dragon faun. Adopted by a faun-human couple who were hunters, Issei now has to start his new life over and find his new path as a hunter. Now in a new world, where the only legends are summed up as two gods and the greatest danger are creatures fueled by all negative feelings. Issei will have to fight his way to become strong and defend what is most precious to him. This will be the adventure of a hero from another world in a world that is the remnant of what it once was. Clarifications. Takes place after For the Greater Good. RWBY crossover with some characters from other series. This is an AU where Salem and Osborn aren't at war. I'll explain that later. They were both chosen as protectors of balance. The Grimm are a product of the depths of darkness and all the negative emotions of every being in the world. The gods left the world after an event that occurred in their ear. White Fang will be divided in two, its other part, originally being called Black Fang, with Sienna leading White Fang with support from the Belladonna family. Issei is reborn as a dragon Faunu, unique in his kind. Issei's aura is enormous due to the power of office clinging to his soul, which greatly amplifies his aura. Unlike a common faun, Issei can assume either a partial or complete dragon form, and in his dragon form, his semblance disappears because his power increases exponentially. Prologue. Anima. Somewhere outside Mistral. In Anima, one of the continents of Remnant, lies the kingdom of Mistral. Just outside its borders, in a cemetery of a small town, were two graves in particular. In front of these graves stood a hooded figure placing a bouquet of roses on each one. The man stood up and remained silent for a few seconds before letting out a sigh. It's been 10 years now. How are you, Mom and Dad? I'm fine. I'm heading to Beacon to train as a hunter, just like I told you when I was a kid. The man was silent for a few seconds and then let out a sigh. I still miss you. I just hope you're happy and at peace wherever you are. As for me, I'll continue with my dream and become a great hunter like you were. And now I'm not alone. I have precious people in my life, and I'll protect them with everything I have, the man said with a calm smile on his face, looking at the gravestones. A few meters from where the subject was, 3 hooded figures can be seen waiting for the subject. Anyway, I'll probably be back for a while, but when I do I'll tell you everything that happened to me. See you later, the man said as he approached the 2 hooded figures. Well girls, let's go, the man said, and the 2 girls nodded and walked alongside him. As the man walked towards a vehicle that he owned and in which they had been traveling, he began to remember how he got here. Flashback 17 years ago. 16 years ago, in a town in Mistral, a human man and a faun woman came across a baby in a clearing in a forest near the town. The couple took the child under their care and adopted him as if he were their own son. The baby's name was Issei. The couple named Zach Underwood and Alexis Revik, hunters from Beacon and former members of the Azure team with Alexis as leader, adopted Issei, who became Issei Underwood Revik, something the brunette eventually got used to. His first 2 years were something that surprised the couple, since Issei learned to speak and walk at only 1 year old and also grew 2 golden horns that protruded from his forehead, showing that he was a faun of some reptile. Issei, for his part, began to learn more about this world, and what surprised him most was the strong discrimination that existed between humans and fauns. Although in his previous world there had always been racism and discrimination of all kinds, in this world it led to 2 human-faun wars that claimed thousands of lives on both sides. Issei also discovered that the predominant language in any part of this world is English, which simplified learning the language for him. Along with that, the most surprising thing, and what worried the young brunette, were the Grimm. The Grimm are creatures of darkness whose sustenance is all negative energy, be it hatred, resentment, annoyance, fear, worry, and so on. All these feelings and bad vibes are what cause these beings to attack humans and fauns alike, and sometimes even wipe out villages on the outskirts of kingdoms. They come in all types and levels of danger, the most common being the Beolfor, which are the ones that most often roam the surroundings or forests, and sometimes they are joined by the Nevermore or the Deathstalkers, which are even more dangerous than the 2 mentioned above. Finally, Issei also learned about dust, a material containing a certain magical essence that serves as fuel or ammunition. It comes in different elements and is the largest energy source in this entire world. Furthermore, it is exported by the SDC, Schnee Dust Company, which is number 1 in dust extraction. In addition, he also learned about the special abilities that a human being or a faun could have, abilities called aura and semblance. Aura being the manifestation of one's soul. Issei, possessing a strong soul due to Office's diminished power, has a large and powerful aura, black with purple undertones. This aura offers several benefits, serving as a protective shield, a second skin that prevents significant damage to the body. It also aids in regeneration, extrasensory perception, and weather protection. While the weather is rarely a problem for him as a dragon, his aura has proven effective in mitigating the cold and, to some extent, the heat. On the other hand, there is the semblance, which works in conjunction with the aura, being the manifestation of innate and personal power as a unique ability of each individual, with effects that vary greatly from one user to another. With all of that in mind, Issei decided to become stronger, as Chimyun had told him before sending him to this world. His growth in power was limitless, and he could become as strong as Drager Albion in their world. He would do this because he knew that with time, bad things could happen, and he had to be prepared for them, as well as defend everything he had come to love in this world. So the years passed, and Issei lived happily with his new parents. They would occasionally go on missions, and seeing that Issei was far too intelligent and responsible for his age, they would leave him in the care of their neighbors, who were kind people and close friends of the couple. As they left, Issei trained his semblance. He had discovered it by accident while preparing soup. Some of the heat from the wood fire was absorbed by him, making him feel stronger. He discovered that his semblance also absorbed a small amount of the sun's heat, increasing his power, though this increase was momentary, leaving him exhausted, as if he had just undergone intense training. Issei trained his semblance so that he could, at least, make it stronger. In the end, I named her Sunshine because, as she absorbed some of the sun's heat, that name came to mind, and that's how her appearance remained. What is Sunshine all about? You might be wondering. Well, let me explain. This semblance absorbs heat from the surrounding environment, directly impacting Issei. When Issei absorbs this heat, his power increases exponentially, boosting his stats, speed, strength, defense, and stamina. This causes a physical transformation, granting him increased muscle mass and height. However, every semblance has its weakness, and Sunshine's weakness lies in its inability to sustain it for extended periods. Furthermore, its aura becomes severely weakened at the critical point, leaving him extremely vulnerable after use. Prolonged use of Sunshine could render Issei unconscious for up to a week, so he only employs it in moments of absolute necessity. Issei also learned something. The more he trained his semblance, the more durable and powerful it became. However, the more powerful it was, the greater the burden of its side effect, and so he trained his body to have to lessen that effect, even if only for a short time. Seeing Issei train, his parents decided to help him. His mother ended up helping him with swordsmanship, which was what Issei wanted to use, and his father helped him in combat, so he wouldn't throw wild punches. All of this happened between the ages of 4 and 7. But why only at that age? Well, even when one wants a happy life being with loved ones, even when in their world their parents took care of them from childhood and were with them. In a world where bandits, criminals, and worst of all, the grim, are commonplace, it was only a matter of time before Issei was left alone in this world. Her parents went out on a mission, a grim extermination mission, and they would be gone for 3 days. They never returned. Along with other hunters, their parents died in action as several Goliaths and some Alpha Nevermores appeared. The mission became complicated, and of 30 hunters, only 5 survived, none of whom had parents among them. Issei cried, and that was the saddest day of his life in this world. He lost his parents and was left alone in orphanhood. His life then consisted of training and finding ways to support himself. Even though the neighbors helped him on occasion because his parents were close friends of theirs, Issei didn't take full advantage of it and looked for ways to earn money. Living on what little he had and meeting an old friend of the couple, a beautiful, dark-haired, and somewhat tipsy woman, Issei, at the age of 9, left home and forged his own path. His journey to train and become strong, even as a mere infant, a journey that would begin, without him knowing, his story in Remnant. End of prologue. Well, as final words, let me tell you that I decided to start this fic as the definitive RWBY XDXD fic that I will create, given that the 8th season of the series is currently in full swing, and I want to do this fic well. I'll try not to make Issei a rotten version of Remnant, as that takes away from the fun of the story. Of course, Issei will be stronger than some characters, but that's why I've included characters from other series as antagonists. Salem won't be the main enemy since not much is known about the relics beyond the one of knowledge, and so far we've only seen the powers of 3 of the 4 maidens, so things will be different here. As I said before, the enemies I have planned are Virgil Bernstein, the king of fighters. This character is for noobs, if you know what I mean. He'll be the leader of the criminal organization that will be created in the story. Give me suggestions for his description, since the only thing I can think of is giving him something that amplifies his power. Akuma, Street Fighters. This character won't be as powerful as in canon, but he will be just as powerful as Rugel. His semblance will be the Satsui no Hadu, which will grant him even more power. He will be a wanted criminal for the murder of several hunters, a truly powerful individual. Rob Lucci, One Piece, well this guy isn't a villain, he'd work well as someone who works for RWBY. He'll be a fawn, and I'll have to figure out how to create a semblance, or you can suggest one. Variant will be the same, there's nothing more to say that hasn't already been said. Arthur Watts will be the same as before. Irachi, the king of fighters, a minor god who was sealed away by the gods of light and darkness, and who harbors a deep grudge against humans and fawns alike. He's a god, so I can't say much about him. The Hakesu of Irachi, although Shermie will probably be saved. Probably Vice and Mature too, but given their personalities I don't know, I won't give a description of them because they are from a time when magic still existed, so they will remain as they are. Beyond that, I don't have many in mind, maybe an Oct to replace Adam, since Adam Taurus will be a woman in this story. So that's all, but not before I tell you that this fic is probably the one I'll write the most, because I don't have my PC nearby, and it's the easiest thing to do on mobile, besides being a DxD fic, it will probably be the one that gets updated the most, because I write the other fics on my PC, where I have everything I need to do it. So I hope you understand that. Finally, the first few chapters of this fanfic will be a saga of young Issei traveling through some of the locations featured in the story and meeting some RWBY characters. 3 girls from the series will accompany Issei, and if you guess who they are, I'll give you this J. By the way, if you could give me the name of any brown-haired character who could look like Issei, I would appreciate it, since the only one that comes to mind is Tsuna Saida from Katekyo Hitman Reborn, and I have him in mind for Maken Kai DxD. I'll be uploading the Harem after this saga and before the first arc of RWBY, so we'll read each other later, friends. Also, I won't be able to add images due to lack of internet, since I'm updating this from my mobile using data. Now then, Draco out. Chapter 1. Arkai, the Great Journey of the Dragon. Somewhere in Anima. Walking along a path somewhere on the continent of Anima, there was a brown-haired boy wearing a red t-shirt, black pants, and white and black sneakers. The boy had a large black mountaineering backpack, which was noticeably larger than him, but he still carried it with ease. The boy saw a scroll that had belonged to his father, and that had a map of the continent. Well, according to this, I'm 6 hours away from reaching Mistral, said the little boy, no more than 10 years old, walking calmly along the dirt road. This boy is none other than Issei Underwood Reivik. He left home a year ago and has been wandering around with the sole purpose of going to Mistral to see what he can do with his life, perhaps enroll in a school for hunters or something like that. Issei walked calmly, knowing that now he had to take responsibility for himself. In his world, it hadn't been like that until he discovered the supernatural world, where he earned money through his work as a demon and the Op-I Dragon program. But now that wasn't the case, and he would have to take responsibility for his life one way or another. Knowing that things like manga and an anime didn't exist in reality gave him many ideas. Issei's destination is Mistral. Why? No real reason. He simply thought he could get some kind of job or something to survive, even if only for a few days, until he found somewhere else to go. Thus the boy walked for 6 hours, finally arriving at the city in the center of the kingdom of Mistral, the capital Mistral. Well, it looks like a beautiful place, Issei said, taking in the city built along and high up the surrounding mountains. Issei walked for a while and finally went to a food stall for lunch. After that he went to look for a place to spend the night. Issei walked past until he reached a secluded place where there was a kind of orphanage, more like an old barn with a tree near the entrance, surrounded by old wooden fences and some old trucks behind it. Issei looked around, seeing the many children playing and so on. Everything would be fine if it weren't for the fact that he saw some children bothering a girl with black hair and wearing white clothes, whom they had pinned against a tree at the entrance. If there's one thing Issei doesn't like, it's when others are abused, especially when there are several against one. That shit is just plain cowardice. Since the orphanage had no walls surrounding it, being on a hill, he simply approached where the children were bothering the girl. They had to be brats, seeing how cowardly they are just to bother a little girl. How I hate bullies, Issei thought angrily as he approached the children. What? My life is a mess. I know nothing about my parents, since my life consists of being in this shitty orphanage. For 10 years I've been the victim of physical abuse by all the stupid kids at this orphanage. The staff ignored me and just kept me as their servant, always cleaning. They ate little and worked a lot. It was a disgusting life. There wasn't a day that went by that I didn't feel like trash, and that bothered me a lot. I'm fed up with this, fed up with being trampled on, fed up with this damn mistreatment, fed up. Today, as always, they made me clean the floors of this dilapidated place, while those idiots run around making a mess where I had already cleaned. After I finished, I had a moment of calm within this hell, but the same thing happened as always, the older ones came to bother me. They grabbed me by the hair and threw me against a tree at the entrance. Haha, stupid Cinder, she'll never get adopted, one of the older ones, and the leader of this group of misfits mocked me. That's strange, you're the oldest one here, so could it be that nobody likes you? I couldn't help but tease him, but it was a mistake because he got annoyed. So you think you're so funny, huh? You'll see what happens to jokers like you little shit. It was a fact, they were going to hit me again, and nobody was going to intervene or so I thought. Hey, you idiots. Leave her alone and find someone your own size. When I looked to see who it was, I was surprised to see a boy my age with brown hair who confronted these stupid people. Although he was cute, I couldn't help but wonder if he was an idiot or brave for standing up to older boys. Hey, you better get out of here, brat, before you get hurt. This idiot, even though he's the oldest of them all, being 15 years old, is unbearable. Ah, I hope they don't hit the thumb. Apparently I wasn't the only one surprised. Bother her again and I'll break your teeth and make you swallow them up your ass, the boy threatened, raising his fist and slamming the idiot on the ground, who was bleeding from the nose and had tears in his eyes. Faggot. He just got up and went to cry to the managers while his group of idiots followed him, scared that they would get beaten up. Are you okay? The boy asked me, who, looking at him closely, is very handsome. No, Cinder, you don't know him, calm down. Yes, I'm fine, thank you for that, I said as he helped me to my feet. He gave me the most beautiful smile that anyone has ever given me in my entire life. Haha, that's good, I don't like it when someone takes advantage of others, much less a pretty girl like you, he told me, or, he thinks I'm pretty. I think I blushed, darn, no one has ever called me pretty. I thank you, was all I could say, since it's the first time anyone has been kind to me. He smiled at me, I didn't know why, but I started to like that smile. Vinpov Cinder. Of normal. There was Issei, in front of that girl who was looking at him blushing. You're welcome, as I already told you, I don't like bullies, said the brunette with a smile, ignoring the girl's blush. By the way, my name is Issei, Issei Underwood Reivik. Issei introduced himself. My name is Cinder, she introduced herself, to which Issei nodded. Well Cinder, it was a pleasure meeting you, but unfortunately I have to go, said Issei, as he had to go find a place to spend the night. Cinder felt bad, even though she had barely met him, she didn't want to let him go. It was the first time in her 10 years of life that someone had defended her and helped her with anything. Issei looked at his sad expression and understood. I'll be in Mistral for a while, so how about I come visit you from time to time? I mean, it seems like those guys from before are always bothering you, and it would be bad if no one taught them a lesson, Issei said, cheering up the dark-haired girl who nodded. Yes, of course, that would be great, Cinder said happily, because that way she could have her first friend. Well, for now I'm going, I have to find a hotel, Issei said, walking away, but not before adding, by the way, here, take this. He tossed her a large package of filled cookies, which she quickly caught. She looked at Issei, who smiled at her. See you later, he said, and with that, Issei left in search of a hotel. Cinder stood there, watching Issei go while clutching the package of cookies with a smile. Something told her days were about to change for the better. Thus began Issei's stay at Mistral. 4 months later. Issei was sitting under a tree next to Cinder, who was happy. The two got to know each other a little, and although Issei was mentally older, he couldn't stop his childlike body from wanting to recreate itself like any other child. He became friends with Cinder, whom he saw as a younger sister he felt obligated to help. He learned about her life at the orphanage and was upset to find out she was always ignored by the staff and treated like a servant. Fortunately, ever since Issei beat up that brat, Cinder hasn't been bothered again, at least not physically. Anyway, they became friends and that's what matters. I didn't plan on staying in Mistral for very long, Issei said calmly, as Cinder looked at him with concern. Did she want to leave? Was she going to be alone again? She felt very sad, since Issei is the first and only friend she has, as well as being the only one who has been kind to her, even though she barely knows him. She didn't want Issei to leave. Issei noticed that and knew he had said things wrong. Oh, no, I'm not leaving. It's just that I didn't plan on staying in one place for very long, not since I left home a year and a half ago, Issei said, explaining how he ended up there. I mean, I have somewhere to sleep and I help a man at his food stall, so I'm doing alright in Mistral. Besides, it's a quiet place if you ignore the bar fights and other things that usually happen every day, Issei said with a touch of humor. So you're not leaving? Cinder asked, relieved. No, maybe I'll stay here and enroll at Heaven Academy to become a hunter, Issei said calmly, while Cinder looked at him in surprise. Do you want to be a hunter? She asked, since she didn't know that about her friend. Yes, I want to be a great hunter like my parents, Issei said with a touch of nostalgia. Cinder thought for a moment and then smiled. Me too, when I get out of here I'm going to heaven and becoming a hunter, said Cinder, since she wanted to be with Issei as a hunter. Issei smiled at that and then remembered something. By the way, Cinder, you told me that your birthday is the day they found you at the gates of the orphanage, right? Issei asked, to which she nodded. Yes, why do you ask? Cinder wanted to know. Issei said nothing, and from the backpack he always carries, he took out a black box and handed it to Cinder. Happy birthday, Issei said with a smile. Huh? Cinder was stunned. Nobody cared about her birthday, and now he comes along and gives her a present. She trembled as she took the box, and upon opening it found a small chain with a red flame-shaped pendant. This thank you, she hugged Issei while she shed tears. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever been given. Haha, you're welcome, Issei said with a smile as he hugged Cinder. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking and eating some cupcakes that Issei had brought with him. Finally, Issei said goodbye to Cinder and promised to return the next afternoon because he had to help the old man at the food stall. Little did Issei know that this was the last day he would see Cinder again. The next day. It was 3 p.m. and Issei was sitting somewhat sadly on a bench in one of Mistral's many parks. Half an hour ago he learned that Cinder had been adopted by a wealthy-looking woman and taken to Atlas. She felt sad and happy, sad because Cinder had left and she hadn't even been able to say goodbye, and happy because at least she would have a family, or so she hoped, since she didn't know the woman who had adopted her and couldn't say whether she was good or bad, although she hoped that wasn't the case. In the end, there's not much left to be here for, he said to himself, and then went to the food stall where he was helping out. His stay at Mistral had ended. 1 month later outside Mistral. Walking along a path on the outskirts of Mistral, Issei sat behind a truck that was going to sell goods along Anima. Issei was lying on some sacks of rice while looking at the sky above him. I hope she's happy wherever they took her, Issei thought, remembering his dark-haired friend who was adopted a month ago. After finding that out, he simply spent a month in the capital until he decided to continue on his way. For the time being, he hitched a ride thanks to one of the friends of the man he helped at his food stall. The truck's first stop would be some towns far from the capital, eventually ending up in a town called Kuroi, which Issei decided to take as a place to live while he was passing through, since the old man at the food stall had lived there and told him it was a good place to live. Well, now let's see what the future holds, Issei said, closing his eyes to rest for a while, as this journey would be long. Chapter 2. Arc 1: The Great Dragon Journey. 1 week later, Kuroi. Alright kid, here we are, said a man who looked like a trucker, complete with a cap. Yes, thanks for the ride, Issei said gratefully, carrying his large mountaineering backpack. Don't even mention it, but anyway, goodbye kid, and the man started the truck and continued on his way. Issei sighed and looked around. Kuroi, what a beautiful place, Issei said with a half-smile after seeing the place. The chestnut tree leads into the village surrounded by 5-meter walls. Issei walked through the streets of the large village. He noticed the oriental atmosphere of the place, almost like a Chinese village, just as the capital of Mistral had a Chinese feel. The chestnut tree eventually ended up at a noodle stand where he ate 3 bowls of noodles with pork. Issei finished eating, but something caught his attention. She was a little girl with orange hair who watched people eating from under one of the bridges. Issei looked at her for a few seconds, which she noticed and hid. Issei knew it from her disheveled appearance and the dirt on her face. She lived on the streets and didn't have much to eat. Issei went to a store and bought some things like chips, fruit, a 2-liter bottle of water, and some bread. Then he began to look for the girl who had left the place under the bridge. For a few minutes he wandered around Kuroi until in an alley between 2 shops, hidden in some cardboard boxes, was the girl eating a bread that she got after stealing it from a shop, and when she saw Issei she became hostile. Hello, Issei greeted, alarming the orange-haired girl who wanted to escape, but the only way out was where Issei was. You don't have to be, I'm not here to hurt you or anything like that, on the contrary, I'm here to give you this, and Issei showed her the bag with the things he bought. The girl was surprised but still suspicious. Nobody was good just because, even if it was a boy her own age. Issei looked at that and sighed. Apparently, life hadn't treated him well, and he distrusted everyone. Come on, don't worry, I just brought you something to eat, Issei said, though she still looked at him suspiciously. Issei took an apple out of the bag and offered it to the redhead, who looked at the apple and then at Issei. Come on, take it, Issei said, and she slowly approached to take the apple. Seeing that Issei did nothing, she ate it and devoured it quickly. I was hungry, well, come with me, let's go somewhere with fresh air to eat, Issei said, and she followed him. The two walked under the gaze of the people. Some who had fed the girl looked at Issei with surprise, and others who simply frowned at the sight of the orange-haired girl. After a few minutes they left the village and sat under a tree where Issei took a blanket out of his backpack and laid it on the grass to put the things he had bought. Come on, eat, Issei said, and the girl quickly began to eat the things Issei gave her. She ate like never before, finally satisfying her hunger, and smiled because of it. Well, I'm Issei Underwood Reivik, what's your name? Issei asked the girl. I'm Nora and thank you for the food, Issei, Nora said with a grateful smile, which Issei shook his head in disapproval. "You're welcome," said the brunette, then looked at her. "Tell me, Nora, what are you doing living in that alley?" Issei asked with a frown, which made Nora sad. "Well, my parents abandoned me in this town when I was 7 years old, and since I couldn't find anywhere to stay, I ended up on the streets," she said sadly as she remembered that. Issei felt bad for her and was angry with her parents for abandoning her. It would have been better to leave her in an orphanage than to let her live on the streets. "That's bad, besides, those aren't parents if they didn't want to take care of you, but don't worry, as long as I'm here you won't lack anything," said Issei, stroking Nora's head, who let him. "Why would you do that?" Nora asked, confused. "Because it's the right thing to do," Issei said with a smile that he didn't know why, but which filled Nora with happiness. In the end, they spent their time eating while talking a little. Why help someone? Because it's the right thing to do. He doesn't seek fame or glory, simply because it's the right thing to do. Even though it might not seem like it, he has helped people in Nora's state. People who were living on the streets so that at least they would have something to eat. He was an adult in a child's body and he sees things differently than others. All of this was left to him by his beloved Asia, Zenobia, and Irina. The three of them were like that. He still remembers that their goal was to create places to help homeless people, something he was going to support with his own money since he thought it was a beautiful thing. No matter what, he would help those he could with what little he had. That's how the day went with Issei and Nora, where the brunette went to a hostel to rent a room where Nora and he could sleep. 1 week later. "Ice, what are you doing?" asked Nora, wearing clean clothes, looking to the side of the brunette who was drawing. "Oh, this. It's just a comic," Issei said with a smile, surprising Nora. "A comic? Really?" the redhead said, surprised, then smiled brightly. "What's it about? What's it about? What's it about?" she asked energetically. "Well, it's about." And Issei told her more or less the description of Dragon Ball, the first one, and Nora was fascinated by it. "Oh, that sounds great," she said with a big smile. "Haha, thanks, when I finish you'll be the first to read it," said Issei as she jumped for joy. "Yay. Yay. That's great," Nora said cheerfully, making Issei smile. After a week, Nora became a cheerful person, and since Issei got a sort of job helping out in a store arranging things, and Nora ended up helping out, they live well. Issei could use the savings he had left in his parents' account, but he would never touch them, or at least not until it was absolutely necessary, even though his parents had saved a lot. Issei was now drawing the Dragon Ball manga, and surprisingly his drawing was similar to that of a professional mangaka, perhaps it was something that Chimyun did before sending it, as a way of thanking that woman. "Well, I'm going out to play with Leah for a while," Nora said, to which Issei nodded. "Well, take care and remember, if you want anything just come for money, and I'll give it to you," Issei said, and the smiling orange-haired boy nodded before going off to play with his new friend. Issei continued with his manga. About 2 days ago, Nora and he met a girl, her name was Leah Ren, who lived with her parents. The two girls became friends instantly, and now they play together. Issei, driven by the childish instincts that occasionally attack him, has found himself in the situation of playing with the two girls. He also trains his semblance from time to time, since it drains his strength, he cannot use it for long, and that frustrates him, but nothing is easy, and he understands that. So now he's resolved to plagiarize series from his world on a monumental scale to make money, or at least the ones he remembers. Anyway, he had to get his act together if he wanted to have Dragon Ball ready. Later that day. "Ah!" Issei screamed as he escaped from a Borbodisk. The chestnut-haired man went out to train for a while Nora played with Leah nearby. He left Kuroyuri to have more space and not bother anyone while training his semblance, but now a damned boar Grim was chasing him when he accidentally threw a fireball into the bushes. Now Issei was running like an idiot. Or so anyone who saw him would think. Issei had a plan, and it was to make that stupid Grim chase him until. Now. Issei jumped towards a tree. The Borbodisk, due to the sudden movement of its prey, was unable to stop in time and crashed into the tree. From one of the branches, Issei drew a short sword and, aided by his semblance which gave him a yellow aura, jumped onto the Borbodisk to plunge the sword into its head, causing the Grim to turn to dust in a few seconds. "Phew, that was kind of scary," he said to himself as he wiped his forehead. After a few minutes, he walked back to the village to buy the ingredients for dinner. "I see," was the cry of a cheerful Nora who was followed by a cute little girl with black hair with pink streaks. "Nora, Leah, how are you?" Issei greeted with a smile. "Hello," greeted Leah Ren, a somewhat shy but kind girl whom Issei and Nora met by chance on one of their walks through Kuroyuri. "Where are you going?" Nora asked. "Well, I'm going to buy the ingredients for dinner," said Issei, as Leah put on a thoughtful face before remembering something. "That's right," Leah said, drawing their attention. "Mom said she's inviting you to dinner tonight, so do you want to come?" The dark-haired girl asked, prompting Issei to think for a moment before feeling a sense of anticipation. Of course, it would be rude to refuse such an invitation, Issei said, and Nora smiled. Great, dinner at Leah's. She said with such enthusiasm that it made Leah smile. Okay, I'll go home and tell mom, we'll expect you at 6, she said, quickly leaving for her house. Meanwhile, Issei smiled at that and looked at Nora. Okay, go home and put on something nice, I'll go buy some things, said Issei, and Nora hugged him before quickly going home to change her clothes. Issei, for his part, decided to go buy a cake. He wouldn't go empty-handed, so he would take a cake to Leah's house. Sometimes having the body of a child and the mind of an adult is complicated, she thought as she went to get the cake. Hours later Ren house. Issei and Nora arrived at Leah's house. The brunette knocked on the door and after a few minutes Leah went to open it with a smile upon seeing her two friends. Guys, they're here, come in, mom's already made dinner, said the little black-haired girl, taking Issei and Nora by the hand as they entered the house. The house itself is similar to typical Japanese houses, or so Issei thought when comparing them to those in his world, since he noticed that in several parts of Mistral, there was that type of architecture. After a few seconds they arrived at the dining room. Mom, my friends are here. Leah said to her mother. Oh, that's nice, said a beautiful brunette woman in green clothes like Leah's. Issei and Nora looked at Ren's mother. She is beautiful, Issei couldn't help but think as he looked at the woman. Nice to meet you, little ones. I'm Ren, Leah's mother. It's good to finally meet my little girl's friends, and said with a kind smile. Nice to meet you ma'am. I'm Issei Underwood RWBY, and this is Nora Valkyrie, Issei greeted politely with a smile. Nice to meet you. Nora said with a cheerful smile. I brought this as a thank you for the trouble, Issei said, showing a box containing the chocolate cake he had bought. Oh, you shouldn't have bothered, and said, placing a hand on her right cheek. No, it's out of courtesy and as a thank you for inviting us, Issei said with a half smile. And looked at that and couldn't help but smile. Wow, what polite children. Come on, well, pass me that and take a seat, and said, to which Issei handed her the box, and the two of them, along with Leah, took a seat at the table. The woman served them the food and after a few minutes, they began to eat. During dinner, and began to speak. I heard from Leah that they don't have parents, where do they live? The woman asked, looking at her daughter's two little friends. Well, I rent a house near the entrance to the village. Nora and I have been living there for a week now, Issei said, and she nodded. Are you and Nora siblings? He asked them both, but Issei shook his head. No, I come from a town outside of Mistral, and Nora, she lived in this town but on the streets, Issei explained, surprising the woman who looked at Nora and nodded. My god, how long have you been living on the streets? And asked, surprised. Since I was 7, and now I'm 11, Nora said, further surprising the woman and her daughter. Judging by his reaction, I can see he didn't know about that, Issei said, puzzled. Well, since my husband passed away, I don't go out much. I only go out for food for the week, and since I work as a hunter out of necessity, I don't spend much time here. This week I didn't have work and I decided to stay to meet my daughter's friends, but I didn't know that little Nora had been living on the streets for years. If I had known, I would have helped her, and said with a worried expression, looking at Nora. She's telling the truth, this woman is good, Issei thought, feeling that she was telling the truth, and besides, she was right, since even Nora didn't know the woman. She may have seen Leah from afar, but not her mother. Well, she didn't know, and that's understandable. She has to take care of Leah after all, Issei said with a kind smile. And you? Why did you leave your home? And asked. Well, my parents died when I turned 7, and at 9 I left my village to embark on a sort of journey throughout Anima, Issei said, while Len looked at him with pity. Oh, I'm sorry to remind you of that, and apologized sadly for Issei. Don't worry, I'm fine. I know you loved me until the very end, and that's all that matters, Issei said with a calm smile. You're a strong boy, not everyone would be traveling across an entire continent like that. Tell me, do you plan to become a hunter? And asked, interested. Well, yes, my parents were hunters, and I want to be like them, great hunters, Issei said with a smile. I want to be a hunter too and break the Grimm's legs. Nora said enthusiastically, making Issei sweat because he'd been obsessed with breaking legs for the past few days. Oh, and where do you plan to study? And asked. We haven't thought about it yet, but I heard that Beacon Academy is good, Issei said thoughtfully, since he still hadn't decided where to study, although everywhere he went, people said that Beacon was a good option to train as a hunter. Oh, well, that's a great option. There have been some great hunters who have come out of Beacon, and said with a smile. After that, and amidst random conversation, dinner concluded with Issei and Nora going home to rest. Issei had to admit that Anne was a very good woman, and he envied Leah's father when he got her as a partner, but he put those thoughts aside and focused on the things that mattered. Little did he know that things would change for Kuroiri several months later. Chapter 3. 8 months later Kuroiri. It has been 8 months since Issei arrived in Kuroiri village. During this time, he limited himself to training his semblance to increase the resistance it required, in addition to maintaining control of his aura, which, being the representation of his soul, was very strong indeed. Nora has been happier now that she has finally stopped living on the streets and now has a home with Issei, as well as having a great friend in Leah and a mother figure in An. The woman treated them well, and although she wasn't home much because of her job, she always enjoyed spending time with the 3 little ones, even though Issei wasn't a child mentally speaking. The chestnut-haired man took a liking to the woman. She was beautiful, affectionate, and somewhat calm. Of course, when she got angry, all hell broke loose, but for the most part, she was a good woman. In any case, Issei's life in Kuroiri was good. But as always, all good things must come to an end. Shit, Issei repeated mentally while hiding with Leah and Nora under one of the city's houses. The reason? Well, damn Grim, he complained upon seeing the Grim that suddenly attacked the city. There it was, with a half-humanoid, half-horse appearance, a freaking terrifying and dangerous Grim, and Issei knew it. This happened a few hours ago, everything was quiet in the morning, everyone was doing their daily routines, and Issei had prepared breakfast. And was not there because he had gone out to attend to a matter concerning hunters in Mistral, and left Leah with the 2 of them. So Issei was in charge of the 2 girls, as the most mature of the 3. Everything was normal, as he started drawing while the girls played with some toys that Issei had bought them. But as the man said, nothing can go wrong, and everything went to hell. It was quick and he didn't have much time to take action. So the first thing he did was look for a secluded place to protect the 2 girls and wait for those Grim to move away. In the worst case scenario, he would have to act as bait so they could escape. Issei, I'm scared, Nora said, clinging tightly to Issei's right arm. Leah was clinging to Issei's left arm, who was smiling at them, hoping to calm them down a little. Don't worry, everything will be alright, Issei said, and the 2 of them calmed down a little. The cries for help and panic filled the air. So many Grim were attracted by it, since the Grim who led them, the Knuckle-of-E, whom Issei called a weird centaur, because he had part horse and half-humanoid body, because he had no fucking idea about the name, started all this chaos. The mayor recently sent for help from hunters, but the nearest ones would take a long time, and by then Kuroiri would cease to be an inhabited city. Issei was thinking about what to do, but then he remembered something, the awakening of the semblance, and when he was about to do something, a pink aura covered Leah for a few seconds, and then she calmed down. Leah, are you okay? Issei asked as Nora looked at her friend. Yes, I'm fine, the girl said calmly. At that moment, an Evermore was approaching, sensing Nora's emotional state, but Leah covered the 3 of them with her semblance, turning them grey and clearing all their emotions, causing the Grim to go elsewhere. Issei was surprised by that and then thought of something that would be dangerous and stupid, but that would at least help both girls. Leah, that was great. Issei said, and Leah smiled. Now listen, this is going to sound stupid, but I want you 2 to leave the city while I distract the Grim, Issei said seriously, and both girls opened their eyes and quickly hugged Issei in rejection of what he said. No, I don't want to be separated from you, please don't leave me, Nora pleaded, crying. Ice, don't say those things, this is dangerous, you could die, Leah said, worried about Issei. But if you stay, you could get hurt. Besides, your mother should be on her way with the other hunters. You should leave and meet her. Be alright, I promise, Issei said, smiling even though inside he was nervous, because what he was about to do would be the stupidest thing he had ever done in this world. But Ice, I don't want to, Nora said, clinging tightly to the chestnut-haired man who stroked her hair. Nora, please go with Leah. With her semblance now awake, you can leave the city without any problems. We're just a few blocks from the north exit, so you should go. I'll catch up later, Issei said. Nora didn't want to go, but Issei had no choice and looked at Leah, who, although sad, reluctantly agreed. Leah, please take her, Issei pleaded. Leah took Nora and, using her semblance on her, calmed her down, but she still kept looking at Issei. Now, go, Issei said, and the 2 of them forced their way out as Issei sighed, activating his semblance and absorbing the ambient heat. How I love that it's daytime, Issei said as the heat from the surroundings filled his body. The 2 girls easily dodged the Grims, both running quickly holding hands, while Leah made a great effort to keep her semblance active and use it as a cloak for them. They were 2 blocks away when the 2 of them stopped and went under a house. Leah, do you think Ice is okay? Nora asked, worried about the brunette. Yes, he's strong and brave, so he'll be fine. We have to trust him, Leah said calmly, and Nora had no choice but to agree. Now let's keep going. We need to meet Mom so she can help us, Leah said, taking her friend's hand. Nora nodded and they both started running again towards the exit. There it was, in the lotus position, charging its interior like a solar panel. The heat it began to emit was so intense that you could cook a nice grilled steak. His eyes were closed as he concentrated. He wasn't afraid, since dying for the third time had taken away his fear of death, but he was afraid that something bad might happen to a loved one, so that's why he sent Leah and Nora away, because he was the only one who could do this. After what felt like 5 minutes, Issei opened his eyes, revealing yellowish sparkles emanating from them. Sunshine was active. "Alright, it's time to play," Issei said, getting up. Emerging from his hiding place, he stood tall, displaying a height that could make him pass for a teenager, along with his growing musculature. His shirt was destroyed, and luckily he had made special pants for this occasion. They not only expand but also withstand high temperatures. He had to pay a good amount of money for them. Dry-Eye and Nevermore appeared on one of the roofs of the place and roared upon seeing what to him is food. "You damn bird, I'm going to make Kentucky Fried Chicken out of you," Issei said with a frown. The Nevermore lunged at him and Issei placed his open palm in front of him. Cruel Sun and launched a fireball at Nevermore which, as it went face first towards Issei, impacted his face, exploding loudly. The Nevermore, having lost its head, turned to dust. At that point, several Borbidisks, Hounts and Beowulfs began to emerge from both sides of the street. Issei looked at them all and with an arrogant smile, "I say. All, there's plenty of me for you, of course, if you can hurt me," said Issei, and the Grimm understood, launching themselves at Issei. The sun was about to reach midday. 15 minutes later. Lee and Nora had already escaped the city. They were running through the forest, as were other survivors of the massacre in Kuroyuri. The two girls had successfully left the city and were now heading north. "Leah, Nora," was the shout of Anne who came with a group of 15 hunters. "Mom, Mrs. Anne." Both girls shouted, running to hug the woman who happily welcomed them, relieved that they were okay. "Oh, thank they're okay," she said happily, but then she noticed something was off. "Wait, where's Ice?" she asked, seeing the brunette's absence, and began to fear the worst. "He stayed in the city, he helped us escape," Leah said, making Nora feel terrible and start to cry. Upon hearing that, Anne opened her eyes as wide as possible. "It can't be." The woman cried out in anguish, looking at the hunters. "We have to hurry, there's still someone in the city." And shouted, and several nodded, starting to run towards Kuroyuri. And looked at the two girls and smiled. "Girls, stay here, I'll go back to Ice," and said, and Leah nodded. "Please, Mom, bring Ice back," Leah said worriedly. "Yes, please," Nora said with tears in her eyes. "Don't worry, he's a very strong boy and I know we'll find him," and said, hugging both girls again and, after kissing them on the foreheads, she left with the other hunters for Kuroyuri. The two girls stayed there hoping that Issei was alright. 10 minutes later. "It can't be," Anne said, taking in the scene of what was once her home. The other hunters were no better off, since all of Kuroyuri was engulfed in flames. The very image of hell, since all the houses were on fire and there wasn't a single Grimm to be seen in the place. And started running towards the city. The hunters tried to stop her but couldn't. Then ran through the city streets, seeing that everywhere he looked flames were covering some streets, houses, and buildings. No, she thought worriedly, looking for Issei. No matter where I looked, everything was a mess, there was nothing to save. Just then a half-burned sheet of paper fell in front of her, she picked it up and looked at a well-made drawing of Nora and Leah. This drawing was the one Issei made one day when they were having fun 2 months ago. She couldn't take it anymore and fell to her knees, crying and hugging the drawing. She didn't want to accept it, but it was true, Issei was no longer with them. Now how would she tell her daughter Nora about this? "It can't be Ice," she said, crying. She had grown so fond of the chestnut-haired boy that it was a hard blow for her. After a few minutes she got up and left the place. She had to go to the two girls and go somewhere else. The good thing was that she had a savings account with which she could start again, but the bitter experience did not go away since another member of the family left this world. Or so she thought. 20 minutes earlier. Cruel Sun. Were Issei's shouts as he threw fireballs at all the Grimm that approached him. The area around them was ablaze from the explosions, while the Grimm kept coming. Then a terrifying scream was heard, which made Issei turn his gaze to look face to face at the creator of all this chaos. "Damn horse," Issei said, glaring angrily at the Nuclevi, who looked at Issei. Issei was breathing heavily because using his semblance was costly and he was about to run out of time. The Nuclevi screamed from its humanoid mouth and then launched its two arms like Mr. Fantastic. Issei jumped aside and watched as the Grimm's arms murdered two Beowulfs behind him. "This damn guy is strong," Issei complained. The Nuclevi quickly used Stampede and launched itself at Issei, who began to run between the buildings, but the bastard didn't care and destroyed the buildings to go after Issei. The chestnut-haired man concentrated fire in his hand and, after creating a fireball the size of a basketball, quickly turned around and pointed it at the Nuclevi. Cruel son. He launched the sphere at the knuckle of E, who wasn't stupid and dodged the attack. Damn, this bastard is smart too, Issei said, escaping again. This whole thing was a mess, I had the situation under control, but after this idiot horse arrived, everything went to hell. Issei kept running for his life, grateful that his semblance granted him great speed, because there was no way he was going to escape the damn knuckle of E. So while escaping he threw fireballs everywhere, not caring if a fucking building fell on him, that fucking Grim would still follow him, and the other Grim would move aside because he would attack them anyway. Damn Grim, you're getting on my nerves. Issei shouted angrily, deciding to play his trump card. This is going to hurt in the morning if I'm even alive after this. As he ran, more and more heat entered his body, a yellowish aura began to cover him, and his muscles began to grow larger. The heat emitted was so intense that houses began to burn as he passed near them. The knuckle of E began to slow down as it sensed the heat emanating from Issei's body. Now Issei was in the form he had accidentally found by pushing his semblance to its limit, a form that leaves him undone and unconscious, and is also dangerous, since if he uses it with people nearby, they can suffer damage due to the heat his body emits, and he would have to work on that. I only have 1 minute, but it's more than enough to kill you, bastard, Issei said in his ultimate form, looking at the knuckle of E. The only one who gets out alive here is me, Issei said, pointing his finger upwards as a fireball formed above his finger. Cruel son, he exclaimed, launching the fireball at high speed. The knuckle of E barely dodged the attack, which struck him in the right shoulder, severing his arm and burning him. Bri-eye, the knuckle of E roared in pain. The ball continued its path and hit a group of Grims behind the horse, instantly disintegrating them. It's best to end this once and for all, Issei said, feeling a sharp pain throughout his body, as this form was damaging his body, and the minute wasn't even over yet. Issei inhaled and exhaled, repeating that for 10 seconds when. Take this. Issei shouted, and from his body, several fireballs the size of tennis balls began to be ejected in various directions. The knuckle of E growled in annoyance, but he wasn't stupid, so he started to escape. Of course, several of those spheres hit him, causing him great damage, but he didn't stop. He would have to return to his hiding place in the mountains and leave the city, since there was nothing left anyway. While Issei continued his attack, the Grim also decided to flee since several died from Issei's uncontrolled attack. After a minute had passed, Issei was lying face up on the ground, breathing with difficulty, since he could barely feel his body. His attack resulted in a massive devastating fire that consumed all the houses in Kuroyuri. Damn it, the chestnut-haired boy said, exhausted. His eyes felt heavy. I have to go, Nora and Lily are waiting for me, he barely knew what he was saying. He felt sleepy, but he didn't want to close his eyes. Little by little, his vision blurred, and then damn Grim he lost consciousness, his entire body in excruciating pain. It wasn't long before a hooded figure took him in his arms. The figure was completely covered by a large black hood that concealed its body. The only visible parts were 2 inhumanly wide arms with some black veins. The figure then disappeared in a kind of dark mist, leaving the burning city behind. That day marked the fall of Kuroyuri and, for Leah, Anne, and Nora, the death of Issei. Chapter 4. Darkai the Great Dragon Journey. 1 week later, somewhere in Anima. In a room where there was only a bed, a dresser and a lamp next to a small wardrobe and a window covered by curtains. Issei was lying on the bed with several bandages on his body. The room belongs to a cabin in the middle of a dense forest somewhere in Anima, being that it was in the very center of the forest where there was a large clearing. Ooh. A groan of pain escaped Issei's lips, who slowly began to wake up, and after better understanding his surroundings, he asked the most obvious question, where am I? He looked all around, but then felt a burning sensation throughout his body. Arg, damn, using my semblance is really painful, Issei complained, feeling the burning sensation in his body. After a few minutes the door was opened by the person who brought him, who momentarily surprised him with its appearance. Oh, it's good that you're awake. Tell me, does anything hurt? The woman asked, looking at the brunette who answered. Ignore Jin's lamp. My body is burning, but thank you for helping me, Issei said calmly, as the woman took a seat on a bench near the bed he was occupying. You seem calm despite my appearance, the woman said quietly, looking at Issei. Let me tell you, I've seen all sorts of things, and you're the most beautiful I've ever seen, Issei said calmly, and the woman smiled slightly at the compliment. Oh, that's so sweet of you, it's been a while since anyone said that to me, she said with a soft smile, and Issei smiled back. By the way, who are you? Issei asked, not knowing this beautiful lady from anywhere, but if she helped him, she must be someone good. It's rude to ask someone's name without even introducing yourself, she said with an amused smile, and Issei smiled back. Right, where are my manners? Haha, Issei apologized with an amused smile. My name is Issei Underwood Rievek, nice to meet you, miss, Issei said, as the woman looked at him somewhat surprised by the name, but dismissed it. Well, little Issei, my name is Salem, and well, it's a pleasure to meet you, Salem introduced himself with a smile, and Issei smiled back. Miss Salem, thank you so much for helping me. I thought I was going to die in that place, Issei said sincerely, since that was the first thing that came to his mind. You don't have to thank me. I was just passing by and, seeing so many Grimm escaping amidst a lot of flames in that city, I decided to go see what was happening. I found you unconscious with your body burned in several places, so I decided to bring you to my house to heal you, Salem said, and Issei nodded. By the way, did you do all that? She asked, and Issei smiled somewhat nervously. Well, yes, but it was thanks to my semblance that I managed to make the Grimm flee, Issei said, and she nodded. Your appearance sounds complicated, she said, and Issei nodded. Yes, because if I use it for a prolonged time, well, it has collateral damage, especially when I overuse it, Issei said as Salem looked at him closely. I can see it, she said, as she placed bandages on his arms and part of his torso. Yes, although I'm training her every day so I can control her and prevent her from hurting me. It would be bad if she suffered irreversible damage, Issei said, and the woman nodded. But thank you for helping me, seriously, thank you, Miss Salem, Issei said with a smile. As I said, you don't have to thank me, dear. I just happened to be passing through that city, Salem said with a kind smile. The two remained silent, with Issei looking closely at Salem, since for him, it was strange to see a woman with her physical characteristics. Her skin is as white as paper, her eyes have black sclera and red pupils, and some veins appear on her arms and neck, but her beauty is not diminished, since she is one of the most beautiful women he has ever seen in this world, and that was saying a lot. I see you're interested in my appearance, Salem said with a half smile, while Issei felt embarrassed at being caught looking at the woman. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, he began, trying to apologize, but she stopped him. Don't worry, it's normal since there's no one like me in all of Remnant, Salem said calmly. What happened to make her like this? Issei asked, and she sighed. This happened to me many years ago, she revealed, and Issei looked at her. Although it may not seem like it, I am older than all the beings in this world, Salem said, surprising Issei, since he didn't expect someone so long-lived in this world. Wow, surprising, Issei commented, and she looked at him. You seem calm, Salem said, and Issei smiled. Well, I have some surprises too, but I'll leave that aside and please continue, Issei said, and Salem, after a few seconds of looking at him, sighed and continued. As I was saying, my current appearance is due to an event that happened many years ago, 2,000 years ago to be precise, in a time when magic existed, Salem said as she extended her hand, and a dark orb formed on her open palm. Issei looked at that in surprise, not because magic surprised him, no, what was surprising was that she could do magic, but he said nothing and let her continue with her story. I didn't look like this back then, she pointed out, and Issei looked at her as her appearance shifted to that of a beautiful blonde woman with green eyes. It was Salem herself, just in human form, before she reverted to her current self after a few seconds. I was the daughter of a tyrannical king. My mother died, and that man held me captive in my own room and in the castle, she explained with a touch of sadness as she recalled those days of her childhood, youth, and part of her adulthood. But then, one day, he appeared. She smiled the most beautiful smile she could muster, and her cheeks flushed a dark color, a sign that she blushed. He was a young hero who appeared one day, and after defeating my father, he took me out of that castle, and well, we ended up falling in love. She let out a love-struck sigh, and Issei looked at her in surprise. But one day he disappeared after a strange man appeared and was looking for him. She made a sad face at the memory. His disappearance saddened me, but I had no choice but to accept that he was gone forever. This house is that I shared with him years ago, she said, surprising Issei. But that wasn't what led me to my current self. It wasn't until years later that something fell from the sky. She became serious, and Issei paid closer attention. It was dark and exuded pure evil. It was then that the friend of the man I fell in love with, along with me, met the two gods who created Remnant. Issei was now truly surprised. Were there gods in this world? Issei asked, making Salem look at him because of the peculiarity of the question. This world? She asked, staring at the chestnut tree that knew she had messed up. Damn, I messed up, the brunette thought as he saw her mouth droop in shock. First her story and then mine, Issei said, and she nodded. Well, first, to answer your question, there were two gods, the twin brothers, the god of light and the god of darkness. Both beings shaped and created life across the entire planet and with it, evil, to maintain a balance between creation and destruction, she explained, and Issei nodded. They both contacted us, and out of all the humans in the world, we were the ones best suited to be the protectors of the balance, she said, and Issei was surprised. Protectors of balance? He asked. We were chosen to have some authority over your lands, although the truth is more to prevent what fell from the sky from being released, Salem said seriously. What exactly is that? Issei asked, having a bad feeling. The beast, she said, and Issei felt an ugly tingling sensation run down his spine. The beast? Issei asked, feeling nervous out of nowhere. It was a beast that possessed an enormous body similar to that of a primate, 2 heads, one of a dragon and the other of a lion, and on its back it had 2 dragon wings. It was a being too dangerous for the world, and its mere presence meant destruction, said Salem, feeling fear just remembering the beast. Trihexa, Issei whispered, as Salem looked at him. What did you say? She asked, noticing Issei, with a frightened expression, looking at her. What's wrong? You're very nervous, she said, noticing Issei's suspicious attitude. That beast you just told me about is Trihexa, Issei said as the woman looked at him seriously. Why do you say it's called that? She asked seriously, while Issei sighed and lowered his gaze. I know it's called that because in my world that beast only means one thing, apocalypse, Issei said simply, surprising Salem. You're from another world, she said, surprised, and Issei nodded. And you say the beast is called Trihexa? She asked, and Issei nodded. Trihexa, the imperial beast of the apocalypse, the 666 and the end of the world incarnate, that thing is a being of destruction that only seeks to destroy everything in its path without any regard, said Issei seriously, remembering Trihexa. Salem listened attentively and was surprised by it. Now she had the name of the beast and would have to warn about it. Although, Issei spoke, drawing Salem's attention, who looked at him. From what he told me, that beast is made of the 3 parts I destroyed in my world, Issei said, remembering how he had taken those 3 parts of Trihexa with him. Of course, that surprised Salem, who got up from her seat and approached Issei. Did you destroy the beast in your world? She asked in surprise, since no one, and I mean no one, had managed to destroy the beast. This one, yes, at least 3 out of 7 parts, Issei said, as Salem's eyes widened. Could that beast be divided? And into 7 parts? She asked, surprised. Well, in my world Trihexa consisted of 7 beasts and, using a dangerous technique, I managed to destroy 3 of the 7 beasts that make it up, but in the end I died, Issei said, leaving the woman surprised. Wait, did you die? She asked, as something dawned on her. Yes, I was reborn in this world thanks to a goddess from another world. My name in my world was Issei, but now I am Issei Underwood Reivik, Issei said, and Salem's eyes widened. It's him, she thought, remembering something from her past, and then sat down on the bed next to Issei, who looked at her confused. Is Salem? Issei asked, blushing as he felt Salem's soft hand on his cheek and also at the affectionate expression she made upon seeing him. Issei, how could I not have noticed, you are ice, my ice, she said with a loving smile that threw Issei off balance. Wait, do we know each other? Issei asked, and Salem smiled. Well, you could say that, she said, taking a photograph out of a magic circle. But Issei was surprised by the structure of the magic circle, since it was the same as the one that could be made in his world. Here, look, she said, showing the photo to Issei, who, upon taking it, was turned to stone. It can't be it's me, Issei said, looking at the photo where they appear, Salem in his human form smiling lovingly and hugging a brunette who was him. Salem smiled and pulled Issei into a hug, placing him between her not-so-small breasts, but the little brunette was so catatonic from the surprise that he was not yet enjoying Salem's warm embrace. I didn't think I'd see you again, but I'm glad to see you again, even though you're smaller than I remember, but that doesn't matter, she said with affection in her voice. Issei was stunned, not only because he didn't know what to think about it, but apparently he was in a time 2,000 years ago and fell in love with this beautiful woman who was treating him with affection. I don't understand anything, Issei thought, confused, as Salem continued to hug him with a loving smile on her face. Elsewhere. At an indeterminate point in Remnant, a ship could be seen sailing on the sea. Sir, we'll be arriving in half an hour, said the man who appeared to be the ship's captain to a blond man dressed in a red suit. Okay, let me know when we arrive, the man said calmly, and the captain nodded and went back to what he was doing. The man was on the bow of the ship admiring the sea, and in the distance, solid ground could be seen. The man moved away from the bow to go to his cabin to think. I hope I find that, or else this trip will be in vain, he thought as he looked at an old diary he had on a bedside table. Chapter 5. Arkai the Great Dragon Journey. Moments later Salem's cabin. So there they were, the 2 of them, Salem lovingly hugging Issei and Issei still processing what he had discovered. After a few minutes, Issei reacted and blushed as he felt Salem's large breasts on his face. The warm, soft, and comforting sensation washed over him as he felt comfortable being embraced by Salem. After a few minutes, Salem pulled Issei away from her a little and smiled at him. I'm really glad to see you again after 2,000 years, Ice, she said with a smile, while Issei sighed. I'm sorry, Miss Salem, I don't think I'm the same Issei you're confusing me with, Issei said, sounding confused, but she shook her head. No, you're the same Issei, although I think you're right in saying you're not the one I know, but you're the same, she said, smiling, which confused Issei. Am I not the one who knows, but at the same time am I? Issei asked, confused, and she nodded. Yes, you're the same, I know, but it seems that the Issei I knew isn't you, or at least not yet, she said calmly, which only confused Issei more. I don't understand, Issei said, but she smiled. Don't worry about it, you should rest, you're still weak, she said, affectionately stroking Issei's head, who nodded and closed his eyes again. After that, Salem left the room and went to the living room of his cabin. He sat down in a rocking chair and picked up a scroll that was on a small table next to him. I searched through her contacts and dialed a number. Hello? A man's voice spoke on the other end of the phone. Ozma, it's me, he's here, or well, something like that, Salem said calmly as the man on the other end of the phone, named Ozma, spoke. First, I'm Osmond now, second, are you talking about him? And third, what do you mean by something like that? Osmond said, confused. Well, what can I say, it's him, Issei is here with me, even though he's small, Salem said, and Osmond's eyes widened. Wow, although I understand why you say something like that, it must be him, but maybe from a time before he arrived from where we come from. The white-haired man gave his hypothesis, which Salem understood. That could be it makes more sense, Salem said, agreeing with Opson. Well, if he's still young, you should help him. I mean, you're the one who spent the most time with him and you understand his semblance. Help him become strong so he's prepared for the future, Osmond said, and she nodded. I would have done it without you telling me, I had already planned to help him, because right now his semblance is hurting him too much, Salem explained, and Osmond nodded. Well, I'll leave that to you. Help him be strong, because he'll need it, Osmond said calmly. Sure, I'll do that, the woman said, and was about to hang up when Osmond said something. And by the way, don't take advantage of him because he's a child, Osmond said, and Salem understood and blushed, but he was annoyed. Don't talk nonsense, you damn idiot. I won't do anything to Ice. The woman shouted angrily, while Osmond laughed amused. I hope so, because I know you and you were very clingy with him, Osmond said, hanging up the phone. You damn perverted idiot. How could you even think of abusing Ice? She said, annoyed but blushing. Issei, who heard the call, was initially surprised, but after hearing the last part, he blushed deeply, since it's not every day you meet a sexy woman who has feelings for you or something like that, and who was talking about sexual things related to the two of them. He needed to rest and wait for the help that Salem could give him. 3 days later. And that's how I ended up in this world, said Issei after telling his story to Salem, who was listening attentively to what he was saying. Yes, it's just like what my eye said after a few weeks of knowing me, Salem said, not very impressed, then smiled amusedly. So, tell me, do you like these? She asked, squeezing her large breasts with both arms. Issei blushed and looked down. Now it was easier to embarrass him. Haha, you look cute when you blush, Salem said with a sweet smile at Issei's blush. She liked teasing him. Well, then will you help me with the use of my semblance? Issei asked, and she nodded. Yes, I can see that your semblance is a double-edged sword, and if not properly trained, it could cause you harm in the future, Salem said seriously, and Issei had no choice but to agree. The only thing I have left is physical training, that's what I think would help me adapt to the power of my sunshine, Issei said, and she thought for a few seconds and then told him. That could help you, since there are semblances that need a great physique to be active or used, although meditation could also help you control it, Salem said wisely, and Issei nodded in understanding. Well, that would be a good option, Issei said. Well, first I'll make lunch, then later we'll see about the training I'll give you so your semblance doesn't harm you, but just because I care about you doesn't mean I'll be gentle, so I hope you're ready, because it's going to be hellish training, Salem said, giving Issei a terrifying smile, which made the brunette pale at that. Love this, yeah, said Issei, knowing that without suffering there is no result. Salem smiled warmly at that. Okay, go take a bath, I'll call you for lunch, she said, leaving Issei's room to go prepare lunch. Issei stood there and then sighed. I still can't believe that a beautiful woman like her likes me, although I still need to find out how I met her, the brunette said to himself, but he left that for a while and went to take a bath. Now he was more recovered from the injuries of using his semblance. Half an hour later, kitchen. Now the two were having lunch at the kitchen table. Salem showed off and made a feast as usual, since ever since Issei has been here, she puts extra effort into cooking, and the fact that her food turns out delicious is excellent. By the way, Issei said. Yes, dear. She asked so naturally that it made Issei blush, but he calmed down. I would like you to do me a favor, Issei said, looking at the woman. What would that be? She asked curiously. I'd like to know if you can send a letter to some people, Issei said, remembering the two Wrens and Nora. They must think he's dead, and he doesn't want them to go through that anguish. Who would those people be? She asked, intrigued. Well, they're people I lived with in RWBY before it was destroyed by the Grimm, even though it was for a short time, they're important to me, Issei said, and Salem understood and gave him a smile. Well, that's easy, I can send one of my creations to find and deliver the letter, Salem said as Issei looked at him. Creations? Issei asked, confused. Oh, didn't I mention it? Yes, I didn't mention it. It's just that now that I'm a sort of avatar of the god of darkness, I have certain advantages, and well, I can create creatures similar to the Grimm, she explained as she created a kind of white bird with black bone armor with her hand. It was like a Grimm, but with inverted colors. Although it's somewhat complicated, and even after all these years, I can't create things as big as a King Tijidu or Goliath, but I can create beings similar to the more common Grimm, she said with a certain pride, and Issei was very surprised. Wow, that's great, Issei said, as it reminded him of a very weak version of Annihilation Maker. This little guy can drop off the letter you want to send, just tell me who those people are and that's it, Salem said with a smile. Issei told her about his stay in RWBY, how he met Nora, then Leah and her mother and how he lived there for 8 months, and then how it was he who used Sunshine to make the damn Nucleavi and the other Grimm retreat. Okay, write the letter and then let this little friend send it, Salem said, and Issei nodded, smiling. Thank you, Issei said gratefully. You don't have to thank me, I'll do anything for you, my dear, she said with a smile, making Issei blush. After eating, Issei went to write the letter to Nora, Leah, and Anne. After telling them that he couldn't return to them because he had to train his semblance, he said goodbye with a see you soon. Then the chestnut tree went towards the strange bird, which inserted the letter inside and took flight. 2 hours passed and it was 2 p.m. Salem took him outside his house. Well, based on your appearance, we won't be able to train here, Salem said. So where will we go? Issei asked. We'll go somewhere else, obviously, she said playfully, and Issei smiled slightly. We'll go to that place so you can train your body, meditate to better control your aura, and finally, train the best way to use your semblance so it doesn't harm you when you use it, Salem said, and Issei nodded. Alright, come closer, she said, and Issei approached, only to be caught in a hug that left his face between her breasts. Well, now that you're comfortable, and yes, I know you like breasts, haha she teased the brunette, who blushed but inwardly had a perverted grin on his face as he felt the woman's large breasts against his. Let's go, she said, and they both disappeared into a dark mist. The two appeared somewhere else. It looked like a desolate place, but what stood out most was an old castle 10 meters away from them. Salem released Issei, who looked around the place. Where are we? Issei asked the woman, who gave him a nostalgic look. That was my home 2,000 years ago, she said, looking at the castle, or rather, my prison, she said, sadly remembering how her father kept her locked in her room. Issei looked at Salem's sadness and carefully took her hand, which made her smile at his action. After a few minutes, she spoke again. Well, we'll be here while I train you, so let's go inside because tomorrow training, yes, that's it, Salem said with a sweet, very sweet smile that made Issei's hair stand on end. I don't think I'll get out of this alive, thought the little chestnut-haired boy. Finally, the two continued their journey into the castle. Elsewhere. The ship had docked on the shore and the crew members, along with the blonde man in the red suit, disembarked. They were on a tropical island far south of Sanus. Mr. Rugel, everything is ready for the expedition, one of the men said to the blonde man, who nodded. Well, we have to find those ruins. Only there will we have the answer to what the diary says, said Rugel Bernstein, a famous smuggler of dust, weapons, and other things, although he is only known to his buyers and uses the Bernstein Company as a cover for his illicit activities. The reason they were on that island, far removed from any source of life, was because of an old journal the blonde man had found in Sanus. It contained a map that told him about an ancient deity, forgotten over the years, but who had once been free and possessed great power. His goal was to seize the power of that deity in order to become the most powerful man in all of Remnant and rule the world, something very cliché to be honest, but hey, it's his dream. I'll be a little closer to my goal, the blonde man thought with a malevolent smile. Atlas Hotel Glass Unicorn. In Atlas, more specifically the floating city, in the most famous hotel in the city, in a dark room where there was only an old mattress and a few dirty rags. The little girl was sitting on the floor, lovingly holding a flame-shaped pendant. This is Cinder, who went from living in a place where she was mistreated to another where she was exploited by working long hours. "Ice, I miss you so much," said the little black-haired girl, shedding a few tears of pain and sadness as she clung to the pendant that Issei gave her when she turned 11. "Remember, even if nobody loves you, I'll always be by your side, so don't be sad and keep going to achieve your goals," the brunette told her a few months before she was adopted when she wanted to throw everything away. "I will move forward and become a great hunter, and when we meet again we will never be apart," she said with great resolve. Even if she has to endure everything that her new life entails, she will move forward, and when she grows up she will leave this shitty place to continue on her path. Mistral. In Mistral, the capital of the kingdom of the same name. In a small apartment where 3 people live. Anne, Leah, and Nora. They were still depressed by Issei's death in the Gremory incident. And took a few weeks off to be with the 2 girls, although she felt sad. Now Anne was preparing the food, since in the kitchen there was a window that looked out onto the outside of the building where they lived. Then, to her great surprise, the strange little bird that Salem created flew in through that window. Very suspicious, she threw a kitchen knife with great precision, which ended up destroying the poor little bird and leaving behind the letter that Issei wrote. The letter? Anne asked, confused by the object. She carefully picked it up, opened it, and, seeing nothing wrong, began to read. Her eyes widened in surprise, and tears welled in her eyes, her face beaming with joy. "He's okay, Ice is okay, what a relief," she said, overjoyed that the chestnut-haired boy was alive. "I have to tell the girls." And so, after turning off the stove, she went to Nora and Leah to share the good news. Letter. "Dear Leah and Nora, I'm sorry for making you think I died. Also, I know it was stupid and irresponsible of me to do what I did, but I still wouldn't hesitate to do it again. If you're reading this, yes, it's me, Issei, I'm alive and kicking, so don't worry about me, I'm fine. I won't be able to come to you right now. What happened in Gremory showed me that I still need to become stronger to protect my loved ones, so that's why I'll be training under the guidance of someone who can help me with my semblance problem, so don't worry. I hope you are all well and please forgive me if I made you feel terrible about my supposed death, I am truly sorry, it was not my intention to make you feel that way. Nora, I want you to know that I love you, and I hope that when we see each other again, you will be that strong girl you always told me you would be. Leah, I hope you are strong and know how to train your semblance, although I know you will, you are a smart girl, take care of Nora and prevent her from getting into trouble, you were the more responsible of the 2. And Anne, I hope you're doing well and still being the same loving and kind person I knew, and beautiful of course Take care of the girls and be careful in your work as a hunter. I don't want anything to happen to you or anyone else, so be careful. Anyway, I hope you're all doing well during this time we're apart. I, for one, will train hard and protect my loved ones as I've always wanted. I hope to see you again soon. He wants them, Issei Underwood Reivik. Chapter 6. Arkai the Great Journey of the Dragon. 1 year later Salem Castle somewhere in Anima. In a remote place away from civilization, located somewhere in Anima, stands an old castle that belonged to Salem's father, a long time ago. "Cruel son," was the cry that was heard when a powerful sphere of fire impacted against a Goliath. Boom. The explosion was enormous, and the Grim dissolved into black dust. "Well, you've certainly made progress, but you still have a long way to go to get much out of your semblance," commented a beautiful woman with skin as white as her hair. Ah. Yes, it's tiring. To use sunshine, said a 12-year-old boy, breathing heavily. "Dufu, dear, it's normal, that semblance requires a lot of physical effort to function, and you barely finished part of the training I gave you," the woman said to the brown-haired boy who threw himself to the floor on his back while he caught his breath. These 2 are Issei and Salem, and since the female avatar of the god of darkness brought him to this place, she subjected him to Spartan physical and mental training, which was so that he could use sunshine properly, but he was still far from being able to have good control of the semblance. Strangely, Salem subjected him to training similar to that of a certain bald man with a cape, although increased x2. 200 push-ups, 200 sit-ups, 200 squats and running 20 kilometers, and when he adapted to that, he would increase it by 100 of each, and 5 kilometers of running. He made him meditate and concentrate on his aura, as well as look for a way to prevent Issei from overusing sunshine to avoid hurting himself. When they use sunshine it's to take out trash, or that's what Salem tells them to do when they kill Grims. They live in the castle, which, despite its ancient appearance, is quite different inside. The magic in this world is functional in a certain sense. The 2 got to know each other better that year, or at least Issei got to know Salem, and the truth is, the woman is a sweetheart and I really like her, although he's not ready for a relationship yet, especially with the body of a child, although that doesn't stop him from sharing a bed with her now, being reluctant at first, but giving in the end. Salem occasionally goes to the nearest town to buy supplies, and she's the one who takes care of the food, which she makes better than any famous restaurant, perhaps because of her age or the love she puts into every dish she prepares. Issei can now maintain his sunshine form for at least 15 minutes, but he eventually becomes extremely exhausted and his aura is at its lowest. His final form, however, only lasts for 1 minute and has the same side effect, so there's not much he can do except try to defeat all his enemies within that time. In addition to Cruel Sun, it has 2 new attacks. Pride Flare, which happens when it explodes its Cruel Sun, and Greatest Sun, which is a more powerful version of Cruel Sun. However, this version requires it to remain still and vulnerable to perform, and it also needs to charge for about 30 seconds, although the wait is worthwhile, since it is more destructive than Cruel Sun. Along with that, Salem helped him improve his fighting style, since the woman knows how to fight and hits hard, and now Issei at least had better movement, since his fighting style was not something fixed, and he let himself be guided by his instincts to fight. On the other hand, there was the Dragon Ball project, which he had to restart from scratch, since that damn Knucklev destroyed all his work when it attacked Kuroyuri. Salem, being the good person, or in love in this case, supported Issei and bought him an artist's kit, the kind artists in this world use. Thanks to that, he was able to make progress in 7 months, and have a little more than half of the first part of the series drawn. Of course, he also got his act together and started something similar to Marvel Comics, only with the skills he had. He had to make money, and American comics were very lucrative. Although most of his stories would have to be reinvented, but he'd see how it went. Now Issei was with Salem in a small clearing near the castle when they saw some Goliaths arrive. Salem had the idea of having Issei take them out, and it worked out well, because the brunette managed to take down the 3 Goliaths that appeared. "Come on, darling, you need to rest, but first a bath," said Salem, taking Issei in a bridal-like embrace, which made the brunette blush. "No, don't try anything weird," Issei said wearily, the sweet smile Salem gave him sending a shiver down his spine. "If you foo, I wouldn't do anything you wouldn't like, dear," Salem said, knowing that the bath wouldn't be anything normal. Although their relationship improved and Issei now addresses her informally, he still finds it hard to believe that this woman loves him, and so he decides it's best to let her be happy, because she has helped him a lot this year. The next day, dining room. "So I have to go to Atlas, why do I have to go to that place?" Issei asked, confused, since Salem had told him about it the night before. "Oh, nothing in particular, I just want you to go and get some things from there, you know, with all this technology and stuff, I can't go unnoticed," Salem said calmly. Issei had to agree with him. Atlas is one of the most technologically advanced places in all of Remnant. "Well, when do I leave?" Issei asked. "In a few hours," Salem said, and Issei nodded. 3 hours later outside Argus. Salem transported them both to the outskirts of Argus, from there Issei would take an Airbus to Atlas, where he would buy some materials that Salem needed for some experiments. "Okay, you have everything written down and the money is in my account. If you're going to be late, you can stay in a hotel or some other accommodation. Be careful," Salem said, giving the brunette a kiss on the forehead, who looked at him. "I'm not a child, I know what to do," Issei said with a pout that earned him a tight hug and kisses on his cheeks from Salem. "Mentally, no, but physically yes, besides, I'm the older of the 2 of us, so you'll have to settle for that," she said with a smile, and Issei just sighed. "Okay," Issei said, and hugged Salem, who smiled at that. "See you later." And so, along with his trusty mountaineering backpack, he walked towards the city. "Be careful, darling," Salem said, and Issei nodded. Watching him leave, she sighed and returned to the castle. Even though it was a short trip, she would miss the brunette. Issei walked for 15 minutes until he reached the city of Argus. "It does look like San Francisco," Issei commented, recalling photos of the city and a date he had with Rias a week after the Sarayerg incident. The chestnut tree walked through the city, carefully observing the locals. Then. "Drrrrrrrrrrr. Damn it, stupid metabolism," Issei complained as he felt his stomach growl. "I'd better go find somewhere to eat," Issei said, looking for an establishment that would provide him with food. Issei walked through the busy streets of Argus, and as he turned a corner. "Dumb. Ouch," was what a girl her age said as she fell to the ground after colliding with Issei. "Oh, damn, are you okay?" Issei asked worriedly. "Huh? Yes, I'm fine," the girl said, looking at Issei. The chestnut-haired man, upon seeing her closely, was surprised by the color of her hair and eyes. Her hair was a beautiful scarlet red and her eyes a beautiful emerald green. She was cute and would undoubtedly be beautiful when she grew up. "First, just focus your attention on Pura. I couldn't find a picture of her as a child. Another thing is that either of the 2, you say which is the best." "Oh, yes, let me help you," said Issei, extending his hand, which the girl took with a smile. "Thank you," she said, smiling. The chestnut-haired man lifted her up and they stared at each other for a few seconds. "Are you really okay?" Issei asked. "Yes, no problem," she assured. "Yes, well, anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to bump into you. I'm looking for a place to eat, but since I don't know the city, I don't know where to go," Issei said, and she looked at him with interest. "Aren't you from the city?" she asked. "No, I'm from somewhere else. I'm here to catch an Airbus to Atlas, although hunger has gotten the better of me, and I'm looking for a place to eat," Issei said, and she understood. I understand." In that case, I could take you to a nice place I know. Mom and I go there sometimes, she said with a lovely smile that was contagious to Issei. I would really appreciate it, Issei said, and she smiled. Well, then follow me, she said, and Issei nodded. The two walked for a while, with the girl telling him about some places that caught Issei's interest. By the way, I haven't introduced myself, Issei said, catching the girl's attention. I'm Issei Underwood Reivik, nice to meet you, the brunette introduced himself with a smile. Nice to meet you Issei, my name is Purra Nikos. Purra introduced herself with a beautiful smile. The pleasure is all mine, Purra, Issei said, smiling. Purra and Issei walked for a few more minutes until they reached a small restaurant on a corner. They went inside and Issei noticed the quiet atmosphere. It was similar to those family restaurants he used to see in American movies from the 80s and 90s. Yes, it is a nice place, Issei commented. Right. That's why Mom and I used to come here sometimes, she said, smiling. Well, since you brought me here, why don't you come with me? Issei asked, and she was surprised by that. Really? Purra asked. Yes, take it as an apology for throwing you out earlier, Issei said, approaching the bar. I don't want to bother you, she said somewhat shyly. She wasn't used to being invited to eat. Come on, it's no trouble, so come and order whatever you want, Issei said with a smile, and she finally agreed. Purra approached the bar and sat on a small stool to the right of Issei. At that moment, the manager of the place approached them both. What do you want? The man asked. Issei looked at the hanging menu and ordered a jumbo hamburger, an order of fries and a soda, along with a piece of chocolate cake. Purra, for her part, ordered, just like Issei, a regular hamburger, along with an order of fries and a soda. So the two proceeded to eat. And tell me. Purra spoke, catching Issei's attention, why are you going to Atlas? She asked. Oh, I'm going to get some things that the person who takes care of me left there, Issei replied as Purra looked at him. Couldn't that person go? She asked, since she could barely go out for a walk, she couldn't think of a child her age traveling to other places without adult supervision. Well, she's busy with other things, and I'm used to traveling, so that's why she's confiding this in me, Issei said, lying to her, since he couldn't say he was an adult in a child's body. That would be strange and unthinkable. Oh, I see, Purra said, understanding. Yes, before living with her, I lived in a town called Kuroiri, Issei said, surprising Purra. I heard from my mom that that town was attacked by Grims, said the redeed. Well, yes, unfortunately that's how it was, Issei said sadly, recalling the event. Did you lose someone there? She asked, feeling bad for mentioning that. No, thank that's not the case, but lives were still lost, but most managed to survive that disaster, Issei said, remembering Ann, Nora, and Leah, whom he sends letters to every month. Well, at least several people survived, Purra said, and Issei nodded. The two continued eating and after 15 minutes they left the premises. Well Issei, it was a pleasure meeting you and thank you for the food. If you return to the city, I'd be happy to show you the best places, Purra said with a smile. Sure, I'd like that, Issei said. See you later Purra. Issei said goodbye, grabbing his backpack as he walked away. See you later, she said, waving her hand. So Issei continued on his way to the Airbus terminal to catch one to Atlas. After a while, Issei was sitting on an Airbus with other passengers heading towards Atlas. Estra, isn't Atlas where they took Cinder? He thought, remembering the dark-haired girl. Well, if that's the case, I might run into her while I'm looking for those things Salem asked me for, Issei thought, smiling because he would run into an old friend again. Thus the Airbus disappeared into the distance as the setting sun was seen far away and the fragmented moon peeked out from one side. Chapter 7. Arkai the Great Journey of the Dragon. Hours later Atlas night. It was already night when Issei arrived at Atlas, the great floating and technological city of the Kingdom of Atlas, the place where the Atlas Academy was located and the largest number of military personnel were stationed. The chestnut-haired man left the Airbus station and walked through the streets of Atlas, looking at the things this place had that was clearly for wealthy people, since he noticed that below this large island was the city of Mantle, where the middle and lower class lived. Issei never liked classes. To him, they were pure garbage. But he knew that's how it was, and whoever had more always thought they were superior to everyone else. I noticed several people looking at him, some with distaste, others with neutrality, some with interest, and a few blushing. Attracting women was a real pain, well, sometimes. I noticed few Farans on the streets, most of them being hunters or low-level workers in some fancy establishment. Damn shitty racism, the brunette complained. He knew that racism transcended the barriers of dimensions. I put that aside and set about looking for a place to stay, since it was late and the stores that weren't dust wouldn't be open until tomorrow. I hope I can find a place to sleep, he said to himself as he walked through the city streets. And so I spent at least an hour looking for a place to sleep, but most either didn't have room or simply wouldn't let me in because I was a fawn-bucking racists. Tired of walking, he tried the last place he found marked on the scroll, which was a hotel called Glass Unicorn. Ah, I hope they're not racists, Issei said to himself as he walked to the entrance. I go inside and sigh with relief, noticing some fawns in the place coexisting with some humans. Issei looked around the place. It was high class, no doubt, but he had been in more luxurious places than this. Well, his house in his previous world was better than this place. Putting his musings aside, the chestnut-haired man walked towards the hotel reception, where standing behind the desk was a woman in her 30s, with light brown hair tied in a low ponytail, pale green eyes, fair skin and, why not, a good body for her age. Ignore the remote in your hand. If you want. She noticed the chestnut-haired boy, and at first she was confused since she never expected to see a fawn child carrying a backpack bigger than himself enter her hotel, but she dismissed it because if he came, it was for a reason. Issei reached her and looked at her. Do you have any rooms available? Issei asked the woman. She looked at him for a moment and then answered. Yes, she said, and Issei quickly pulled out a card that surprised her, as it was a light blue color like a diamond. Give it to me, I'll stay for 3 days, Issei said without showing much emotion. She looked at the card and then at Issei, although of course with suspicion, since it wasn't normal to see a child with a card of this level. Let's say there are 4 types of cards. The common ones, which can be any color except the following ones. The silver one is for someone who has a good amount of money, the gold one for someone wealthy, and the light blue one, or let's call it diamond, is for someone who is definitely a very important person in all of Remnant and only a few people have them, including Osborne, Salem, Willow, and that bastard Rugel. Is this your card? She asked cautiously. No, it belongs to my tutor, she gave me permission to use it, Issei said as he handed Salem's ID, in her human form, to her. It's her, he said, giving her the ID. The woman took the ID, and after a few minutes, she returned the card and the ID, then handed him a key with the number 19. Here, it's the second to last room on the 2nd floor. I hope you enjoy your stay, she said with a professional smile. She couldn't possibly show displeasure to someone who possessed such a large card. By the way, dinner will be served shortly. Should we send it to your room, or will you eat in the living room? She asked. In my room please, Issei said, and without another word, he went to his room. Issei walked towards the stairs that lead to the 2nd floor. On his way, he noticed someone looking at him, so he turned his gaze to who was looking at him and noticed 2 girls at least 1 or 2 years older than him. They were both pretty. One had brown hair and the other was blonde with curls. They looked somewhat alike, like twins, he deduced. Both had green eyes, though a bit darker than the woman's, and fair skin. They were dressed in almost identical colors, but not in style. The brunette wore pants, while the blonde wore a skirt. Issei noticed that they were both staring at him intently while murmuring, although of course, he was a dragon, so he heard them. Look, don't you think it's cute? The blonde asked her sister. Well, yes, he's very cute for a fawn, said the brunette, looking at Issei. Did he come alone? The blonde asked. He's probably alone after all, said the brunette. Besides, look, isn't that backpack heavy? Said the blonde, watching the brunette carry his large backpack without any problems. Well, he seems strong, look at his arms, they're well built, said the brunette with a blush that was shared by her sister. Issei ignored them and continued on his way. After 2 minutes, I arrive at the room and go in. Inside I noticed it was a luxurious room with a 40-inch digital television, it's like a scrolling TV, but big and with the functions of a smart TV, a large bed, a wardrobe and other things that a luxury room would have. Issei didn't care much about that. The room he now shares with Salem is 1,000 times better than this place. The chestnut-haired man left his backpack next to the bed and sat down, took out his scroll and dialed Salem's number. After a few seconds, she answered, wearing a black kimono with her hair loose, which made Issei blush, that woman is too beautiful. Oh, honey, how are you? Are you already in Atlas? Salem asked with a smile upon seeing Issei. Yes, I just arrived a few hours ago, I'll start shopping for what you asked for tomorrow, Issei said, looking at the white-haired girl. Oh, that's good, because I really miss you even though I only left you for a few hours, said Salem, putting on a pitiful expression that made the brunette blush. Ah, well, I'll finish soon so I can go back. I don't really like this place, said the brunette, frowning as he remembered how most people looked at him. Salem frowned. She knew what he meant, and it was all because of humans not accepting the fawns. Don't worry, take things easy, but still, I hope you do well and if you have any problems, let me know, and I'll help you in any way I can, said Salem with a smile. Yes, thank you for that, I know I can count on you, said the brunette with a smile that Salem liked. Well, I'll leave you now, I'm sleepy, good night, he said, bidding farewell to Salem. Good night to you too, sleep well and dream of me as I dream of you, she said goodbye, blowing a kiss with a wink at the end, which made Issei blush a lot. The call was cut off and the chestnut-haired man blushed. And the problem is that she's right, he said, recalling the recurring dreams he had about Salem, although of course, he wasn't going to tell her because Aum knew what she might do to him. The chestnut-haired boy started playing a bit while they brought him dinner, and looking at the games in this world, he was a little disappointed since several of them weren't interesting. Well, I guess I'll have to figure out how to create some games too, he said to himself, remembering games like Geometry Dash, Subway Surfers, Clash of Clans, Flappy Bird, Plants vs Zombies, Asphalt, and other games he liked or that were popular in his world. He also thought he could create console games, the top and coolest ones, but he didn't know anything about programming and only knew the game's story. Besides, many would have to be adapted to locations in Remnant instead of Earth. What a crazy idea, he said to himself, I haven't even finished redrawing Dragon Ball, and now I want to make video games. I am ambitious, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Knock. 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 That must be the food, said the chestnut-haired boy as he went to the door to receive his meal. She was in for a tremendous shock when she saw who was on the other side of the door with her food tray. Both of their eyes were wide open, but Issei snapped out of his stupor when he saw the girl almost drop the tray of food, so he quickly grabbed it. "Do I?" said the girl, who is none other than Cinder, who looked better than when she was in the orphanage, but still looked to be in bad shape, and something that Issei didn't like was the necklace she had around her neck. "Ignore the sword," Cinder said Issei, placing the tray on a piece of furniture in the room, then receiving a tight hug from the dark-haired girl who began to cry. "Ice. Ice. Ice." Cinder repeated his name while crying, because she missed him so much these past 2 years. Issei hugged the girl, feeling her suffering, and those tears of extreme joy proved his point. After a few minutes she calmed down and the chestnut-haired man wiped Cinder's tears. "Cinder, what's wrong?" Issei asked, worried about her. Everything happens. My life in this place, instead of being good, has been hell. That woman who adopted me treats me worse than I was treated at the orphanage, and those 2 stupid girls she has for daughters are unbearable. I can't stand being here anymore," Cinder said, letting out her frustration. Issei, hearing this, became angry. He thought these people were normal, and look at him now, adopting a girl to keep her as a slave. His anger was so intense that Cinder was surprised to see Issei's eyes turn green with slit pupils, along with a sudden increase in the room's heat. "That bitch," the brunette said angrily. Cinder hugged him. If there was one thing she knew about Issei, and that probably hadn't changed, it was that he gets really upset when something happens to someone important to him, in this case, her. "Ice, calm down, don't do anything. I wanted to do something with them myself, but I held back because I didn't want to make a mistake," Cinder said, hugging Issei and feeling his body burning hot, like he had an extreme fever, so much so that it made her uncomfortable, but she didn't care. Issei breathed a sigh of relief and calmed down, then hugged Cinder protectively. "Cinder, I don't know how long you've been through, but don't worry, I'll get you out of this shitty place," the brunette said seriously. Cinder was surprised to hear that. "Really?" I asked, happy to hear those words. "Yes, I can't let that woman and her 2 daughters continue to abuse you," said the brunette, knowing that he wouldn't let this go just like that. "But how would you do that? It doesn't seem like it, but she has a lot of money, you could get into trouble," Cinder said, worried that the woman who adopted her might do something to Issei. The chestnut-haired man smiled and looked at Cinder. "Don't worry, I have someone who will help me with this," Issei said with a confidence that Cinder could sense, and she felt at peace for the first time in 2 years. "By the way, what is this?" he asked, touching the strange necklace she was wearing around her neck. Cinder lowered her gaze, and Issei did not like this at all. "Cinder," Issei said, taking her chin in his hand and making her look him in the eyes. "What is that necklace?" he asked seriously. It's a device that gives electric shocks," she replied, as Issei opened his eyes and became even more annoyed, but decided to calm down. "Bitch," he whispered to himself, then looked at Cinder. "Listen, I'll call someone who's helping me now and tell them about you. I'll get you out of here, and you can be sure of that," he said with great seriousness and confidence. Upon hearing that, Cinder couldn't resist any longer and hugged Issei, although that would be fine if it weren't for the fact that she kissed him on the lips, leaving the brunette bewildered. It was an inexperienced kiss, since Cinder was only emulating the movie she secretly watched behind the backs of those 3, and she hugged the unsuspecting and shocked Issei. The chestnut tree, for its part, was. Issei.exe has stopped working. Restarting, yes, that's what his mind was saying at this moment, since he didn't expect that from Cinder. At least not now, and the truth was it felt strange since for him, she was too young for those things. After 2 minutes, Cinder separated from him with a clear blush on her cheeks, but with a big smile. "Thank you, Ice, I love you," she said, leaving the brunette with a blue screen that knocked him out. She smiled at this and leaned in to give him one last kiss and smile back. "I'm leaving, otherwise that old witch will get angry. See you later, Ice." And with that, Cinder left the brunette alone, who hadn't expected that from the dark-haired girl. Cinder left Issei's room with a big smile on her face and touched her lips. "I finally did it, this is the happiest day of my life, and those 3 hateful girls won't be able to ruin it, no matter what they do," Cinder thought with a smile, as she went to continue with her last tasks, before going to the warehouse where she sleeps. The woman, who is Cinder's stepmother, noticed that, but dismissed it. She had better things to do. But Issei. He was still motionless in front of the closed door. 99%. 100%. Systems operational and we returned to normal. Damn, although that was weird, it wasn't unpleasant, the brunette said to himself, then blushed. "I'm not a lolicon, I'm not a lolicon, I'm not a lolicon," he began to repeat to himself while grabbing his head and repeatedly banging it against the wall. After a few minutes, I sighed and took the cold food, although I warmed it up again using my semblance. After eating, I put the tray with the dirty dishes aside and lay down on the bed and stared at the ceiling of the room. I have to talk to Salem about Cinder tomorrow. She'll be better off with us than in this damn place, he said seriously. He closed his eyes to rest, knowing tomorrow would be another day. And just like that, without realizing it, he changed someone else's fate. Chapter 8. Arkai: The Great Journey of the Dragon. The next day, streets of Atlas. The chestnut-haired man left his store while putting what he bought into a bag he had brought with him. He left the hotel early to go buy the things Salem asked him for. He went to several shops in various parts and had to take the tram to get around the city more easily. He stayed like that for a few hours and then went to sit on a park bench near the city center. She bought a meat empanada and an orange juice. The chestnut-haired man was calm, looking at the surroundings. Even with the racist assholes who looked at him badly, hypocrites who changed their gaze when they saw that he had money, and other shitty people, it was a good place to live, he reminded agrees. The chestnut-haired man ate calmly while enjoying the tranquility. He had spoken with Salem about Cinder a while ago, and Mama Salem had surfaced and told him she would help him get Cinder out of that place. If she was like this with Cinder, now he could imagine how she would be with his own children. On the other side of the park. The black car stopped at the east entrance of the park and the driver got out and went to open the door for the people inside. "Thank you, Eric," said a beautiful woman in her 30s with white hair, beautiful blue eyes, fair skin, wearing a white dress with a dark blue skirt and possessing a good body for her age. Following her out was a girl about Issei's age, with white hair like the woman, the same eye color, and dressed in a white shirt with a blue ribbon and a blue skirt, holding a white teddy bear in her left arm. The driver, named Eric, nodded in thanks to his boss. Then another woman came out. She has purple hair tied in 2 braids, circular glasses, fair skin, and wears a Victorian-made outfit with gloves and everything. "Well, we'll stay for a while, I'll call you when we're going home," the woman said, and the driver nodded before leaving. The little white-haired girl was happy as she held her mother's hand. Meanwhile, the maid stood silently behind them. "Come on, Weiss, Roberta, let's go for a walk," said the older white-haired woman, the famous Willow Schnee, CEO of Schnee Dust Company, one of the most important women in all of Remnant since she owns a company that handles dust extraction worldwide. "Of course," said little Weiss Schnee with a smile. Roberta, who is the head maid and bodyguard of the Schnee family, nodded at what her boss said. The 3 of them went into the park, which had a children's play area, and Weiss, with her teddy bear, quickly went towards a swing while Roberta and Willow followed her, Willow having a big smile on her face. Issei's child. The chestnut tree finished its cake and juice, threw the trash in a bin, then sat back down on the bench looking at the sky. He took out his scroll and saw that it was 9:58 a.m, he had time to continue with his shopping. I put away his scroll and then take out an ocarina that Salem made for him by hand, which is very beautiful. "Let's see if I can do it," said the chestnut-haired man, recalling a certain melody by a certain hero. Then the soft melody began to be heard throughout the place. Several people passing by enjoyed the melody, with some looking at Issei in surprise at the beautiful melody he was playing. Some girls were fascinated by the melody, and others thought it was great. Meanwhile, a young Weiss, along with her mother and Roberta, heard the melody and went to see where it was coming from, finding the chestnut-haired man who, with his eyes closed and focused, continued playing the melody. After a few more seconds of repeating the melody, the chestnut-haired man finished and was surprised by the sound of applause. He felt embarrassed. He was so engrossed in the melody that he hadn't noticed several people listening. After a few minutes, people began to leave, leaving the chestnut-haired man there, although someone approached him with a smile. "Wow, that was beautiful," said the future tsundere, looking at Issei with a smile. Thanks," Issei said, smiling slightly. "Where did you learn that melody?" Weiss asked the brunette, since for her, it was the first time she had heard that melody. Well, my father taught it to me when I was little, now that he's gone, I'm the one who plays it, Issei said, lying, since it's from Dragon Ball: The Attack of the Dragon. Oh, it's a beautiful melody, Weiss said, realizing what Issei meant by his father not being there. Well, I know another melody, said the brunette, and Weiss smiled at that. Really? She asked, interested. Willow and Roberta stayed out of the little girl's interaction with the chestnut tree and went to sit on some nearby benches. Yes, wait here and I'll get my flute, Issei said, taking out a flute Salem had made for him, just as beautiful as the ocarina. Weiss sat down next to Issei and hugged her teddy bear. The chestnut tree took the flute and began to play some melodies. He did a cover of Super Mario, something from Final Fantasy, and finally a melody he heard in a Super Sentai game. Weiss was impressed by Issei's flute skills. She can only play a few instruments at her young age, but if there's anything she loves as much as her mother, sister and little brother, it's music, as it's something she loves very much. After a few seconds, Issei finished and Weiss applauded with delight. You're amazing, I've never heard those melodies before, did your father teach them to you too? She asked, amazed. Partly, I made some of them myself, he lied again. If he were Pinocchio, he would be a copy of Usopp. Great, I really like them, Weiss said with a big smile. Issei smiled at that. He liked this girl. The chestnut-haired man took his scroll and checked the time. It was 11:04 a.m. Well, it was a pleasure meeting you, but I have to return to where I'm staying, Issei said, standing up. Weiss felt sad. She wanted him to be her friend. Really? She asked sadly. Yes, they're about to serve lunch and I can't miss it. It was a pleasure meeting you, Issei said, smiling. I'm Weiss Schnee, Weiss introduced herself, surprising the brunette. Wait, Schnee, what's the company in charge of Dust? Issei asked, and Weiss nodded. I'm the owner's daughter, what's more, my mom is right there. Weiss pointed to where Willow and Roberta were watching them, the older white-haired woman smiling as she greeted them. Wow, I don't know what to say, said the brunette, taken aback by the white-haired girl. You could start with your name, Weiss said with a touch of humor. Right, Issei said, laughing foolishly. This brought a smile to Weiss's face. I'm Issei Westwood Reivik, a pleasure, Weiss, he introduced himself to the smiling girl. The pleasure is all mine, Weiss said, smiling. Well Weiss, it was a pleasure meeting you, goodbye, Issei said, and she nodded somewhat sadly. Before you go, are you from Atlas? She asked, hoping that the chestnut-haired man lived in the city. No, I come from a town in Anima, I'm here to run some errands, Issei said, making Weiss look sad. Issei noticed this and spoke, but I'll be staying in the city for a few days, he said, making her look at him. Really? She asked, smiling. Yes, although I don't know for how long, because I only came to buy a few things, Issei said, and she nodded. So the two talked for a while, agreeing to meet again the day after tomorrow, since Willow usually brings her and her little brother to this park, but because her brother was sick, he couldn't come. Then he said goodbye to the two women, Roberta looking at him analytically, since the chestnut-haired man seemed strong for his age, and his years of service in the Atlas army were not in vain. She knew who was strong and who wasn't. That boy is strong, commented the Schnee maid. Really? Willow asked the purple-haired girl. Yes, it's not normal, Roberta said, her expression serious. Well, it doesn't matter, the important thing is that Weiss managed to make a friend, Willow said, happy for her daughter. Roberta, for her part, remained silent but would keep an eye on Issei while he was near her boss's daughter. But Issei minutes later. The chestnut-haired man walked for a while until he reached the glass unicorn, then went straight to his room, and a few minutes later there was a knock on his door. She went to open the door expecting Cinder, but was unpleasantly surprised to see that it was one of the hotel owner's daughters, the blonde with curly hair. Here you go, I hope you enjoy it, she said with a smile that the brunette did not return. Thank you, he said curtly, looking at the girl who was still smiling. Well, see you later, she said, and left, believing she had made a good impression on the chestnut-haired man. Too bad she wasn't worth it according to him. Anyway, he ate his lunch and lay down on the bed, then he would continue his search for the cokes that Salem had asked for. 4 days later. 4 days have passed since Issei arrived in Atlas and started staying at the Glass Unicorn. During that time, he spent his mornings with Weiss, being watched very attentively by the purple-haired maid, and then he spent time with Cinder in the place where she slept, which was the abandoned warehouse that the hotel had and which was rarely visited by the owner and her daughters. Issei stayed longer because some of the things Salem asked for weren't available until a few days later, and he had to wait that time, although he's grateful to have met Weiss and to be reunited with Cinder, since he's been spending time with them. Now Issei headed to the hotel. Weiss wasn't coming today due to family matters, so he decided to go to the hotel to rest for a while. She went inside and headed to her room. After about 10 minutes, someone knocked on the door. She went to see who it was, hoping it wasn't one of the owner's daughters. To her pleasant surprise, she saw Cinder there. "Hello Ice," she greeted with a smile. "Cinder, come in," said the brunette, letting the girl pass. She nodded and entered before anyone could see her. Cinder quickly entered Issei's room before his crazy old stepmother could see her. The chestnut-haired man looked at Cinder, who quickly hugged him, surprising him a little. "When will we leave this place?" she asked as Issei returned the hug and sighed. "Soon, I just need a few more things and we can leave Atlas tomorrow or the day after," said the brunette, which pleased Cinder. "Ah, that's good, I can't stand being in this place anymore, they treated me better at the orphanage," Cinder said with some annoyance. Issei stroked her head, making her relax. "Don't worry, like I told you, that will change when I get you out of here. That woman and her daughters are very unpleasant. Just hold on a little longer and you won't have to endure being in this place anymore," Issei said, and she nodded. "I'd better leave before that old witch starts looking for me, she's unbearable," said Cinder, unwilling to leave. The chestnut-haired man hugged her and kissed her forehead, blushing as Cinder looked at him. "Don't worry, everything will be alright soon," Issei said, and she smiled. After giving the brunette a kiss on the cheek, she left to do the chores assigned to her. Issei was left alone in the room, wondering what would happen from now on, even if he went with the flow and lived in the moment. 2 days later. The time had come, it was time for him to leave, so he began his plan. Issei called Salem, who answered immediately. "Hello dear, is it time yet?" asked the white-haired woman. "Yes, it's time," Issei said, and she nodded. "Understood, I'll be waiting for your signal, good luck," and she hung up. Issei got out of bed and grabbed his large backpack. He was leaving today. She left the room and walked to the stairs. He looked at Cinder in a corner cleaning with a mop and she looked at him. The chestnut-haired man nodded slightly and went to the counter to leave the key. "I hope you enjoyed your stay," the woman said, and Issei nodded. "Come back soon." The brunette turned away. Cinder finished her homework and went to take out the trash. When Issei left, he went to the back of the hotel where the garbage containers were. He looked at Cinder waiting for him and approached her. "Okay, listen, someone will come for you at midnight, it's her," Issei said, showing her a picture of Salem that he had as his scroll background, something that annoyed Cinder, but she left it for later. "She's the one who's been taking care of me and who will give you a new life, so take this and don't lose it, with this she'll be able to reach where you sleep." He handed her a reddish gem which she took. Cinder looked at the gem and then told Issei to hug him. "Thank you," was all she said, but that thank you was filled with immense gratitude. Issei just hugged her. They spent 2 minutes hugging until Cinder separated from Issei. "See you later, and remember to have your belongings ready," Issei said, and she nodded. Thus they both said goodbye, with the chestnut-haired man going directly to the air bus stop for Argus. Cinder sighed and then smiled, something that freaked out her 2 stepsisters and her stepmother, but they ignored it. They didn't know it, but that day would be the last day they would see Cinder. Midnight. It was midnight and Cinder was awake next to a backpack where she put the few things she owned. She was sitting on the old mattress they had given her to sleep on. She was holding the red gem that Issei had given her. She waited patiently as she watched the gem sparkle. Then the shadows began to move. That frightened her, as it was something inexplicable, but she decided to remain calm. The shadows of that old warehouse, which was illuminated by the windows there, converged into a swirling darkness that grew. Cinder looked at the whirlpool with fear. Then the whirlpool dissipated, revealing Salem's curvaceous figure as she looked at Cinder with a gentle smile. "Hello dear, I imagine Ice has already told you about me," Salem said, looking at the nervous Cinder. "Yes, I am Cinder," said the dark-haired girl, and Salem nodded. "Well, dear, come on, I'll get you out of here," Salem said, extending his hand to Cinder. The dark-haired woman approached, she didn't care about anything else, she just wanted to leave this place once and for all. Cinder took Salem's hand, who smiled at that. "From now on, everything will be alright," Salem said calmly. Cinder looked into those black eyes with red pupils. She didn't notice any lies in them and smiled. Finally, she would have a real home. And so they both disappeared in a whirlwind of darkness, leaving in silence that old warehouse where Cinder slept for so many years. Only the broken moon witnessed that. And now Cinder would have a new life that would put her on the right path. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching, if you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day, bye.